Thank you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope we're all feeling well. Yep, and we're not too tired this early morning. Fantastic. So first of all, I apologize because I'm going to be reading from this paper, and if I don't, my team would be really annoyed with me because they've put so much effort into putting this together. So I'll start. Ladies and gentlemen, with immense pleasure and a deep sense of achievement, I am here today as the director of the Universal Energy Facility, engaging in a crucial discussion at COP28 about the impact of results-based financing on energy access in the past 5 years. The collective strides we've taken in the landscape of clean energy financing are truly impressive and hold great promise. Before we explore the core of our conversation, allow me to share some enlightening insights from the International Energy Agency's report, Financing Clean Energy in Africa 2022. This report underscores the transformative potential of results-based financing in the context of energy access. The IEA emphasizes that RBF has emerged as a linchpin in mobilizing investments for clean energy projects in Africa. By tethering financing to tangible results such as expanded access to clean energy or reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, RBF has successfully mitigated perceived risks and rendered these projects more attractive to investors. We witness a growing pipeline of RBF projects in Africa, with several countries actively developing or implementing RBF programs. Notably, there is a surge in investor interest, signaling a positive trajectory for sustainable energy development on the continent. RBF's versatility shines through as it funds a diverse array of clean energy technologies encompassing solar, wind, geothermal, hydropower, energy efficiency, and demand-side management programs. This adaptability positions RBF as a dynamic financing mechanism aligned with the varied needs of African countries. Crucially, the IEA highlights that RBF programs can be tailored to the specific context of African nations, considering factors such as economic and political landscapes, energy infrastructure, and available resources. This adaptability is fundamental to ensuring the success and sustainability of clean energy initiatives across the continent. Moreover, RBF extends beyond its financial role. It emerges as a catalyst for multiple objectives, including job creation, economic development, and climate change mitigation. The impact transcends mere energy access, contributing holistically to the betterment of communities and the environment. Now, turning our attention to the Universal Energy Facility, our commitment to realizing the potential of RBF is evident in our operational presence across 5 countries. That's the Republic of Benin, Madagascar, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and DRC. We've mobilized over $44 million in grant finance, operationalized a refined model in these 5 countries I've mentioned, and we are on track to disperse about $5.2 million by the end of this year, connecting over 5,000 households, businesses, and institutions to our new or improved electricity access. And I think this deserves a round of applause. Our robust project pipeline includes 38 mini-grid grant agreements worth $11.9 million, set to provide improved access to electricity for over 85,000 people and to support 3,000 businesses and institutions. In Madagascar alone, we have verified 2,219 mini-grid connections across 24 communities, and I'm excited because we have the CEO of the very company who is implementing the programs or the projects across Madagascar and is doing such a fantastic job. Our ambitious target is to achieve over 4,000 mini-grid connections In Nigeria, our standalone solar for productive use program has swiftly led to grant agreements worth $10 million, facilitating the deployment of 3,525 standalone solar systems by 2024. By November 2023, the SSPU program had already verified 580 connections with a target to connect 1,000 customers and to disperse $2.4 million by close of this year. We are part of the results-based financing leadership group comprising 20 plus members from funding agencies and RBF implementing organizations. This collaborative effort has led to the creation of an online RBF tracker, enhancing transparency and accountability. As we reflect on these accomplishments, it is crucial to acknowledge that the impact of RBF extends far beyond the numbers. It represents a paradigm shift in how we approach and finance clean energy projects, creating a ripple effect that reaches communities, stimulates economies, and contributes to a more sustainable and resilient future. I promise you we're almost at the end. In conclusion, the next few days at COP28 present an invaluable opportunity for us to collectively chart the course forward. The successes we celebrate today are the results of collaborative efforts, and the challenges ahead demand even greater cooperation, innovation, and determination. I look forward to the engaging discussions and exchange of ideas that we will shape the future of clean energy financing and, by extension, the future we collectively aspire to build. Thank you for your attention, and let us embark on this journey with renewed vigor and shared commitment. Thank you very much. And with that being said, I would like to introduce Mr. Lamide Niyafuye, who is the CEO of AMDA, who will be moderating today's panel session. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Anita. I hope I don't have to apologize for using my phone. So, as Anita said, RBFs play a significant role in catalyzing the deployment of mini-grids and the distributed renewable energy across Africa. I, as the CEO of AMDA, an industry association who is representing private sector mini-grid developers, is interested in the deployment of more RBFs, or the success of the RBF facilities like the UEF. So I will, without further ado, I'll introduce our panelists on this important discussion. And they are, I'll start with, I'll be partial to the developer and start with Roman. Please join us here. Caroline, please. Naomi Wagura. And do we have Damien? Okay, all right, thank you. Right. So I'll invite the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Naomi Wagura, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Lamide. So my name is Naomi Wagura. I am Director of Country Programs at the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. I oversee our work across multiple African countries.
Caroline.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Caroline Ebumbu. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of All On, an impact investment fund out of Nigeria.
Thank you, Lamide. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Romain de Villeneuve, heading Willight Africa, a mini-grid provider, and we'll talk about it later on. Thanks.
Yeah. So as Anita set the tone quite perfectly, the challenge in Africa today is that we have 600 million people that are either unserved or underserved. And essentially, what RBFs have been able to do is provide the cost-effective means of nudging the private sector to deliver energy access services to the base of the pyramid in developing countries, especially in Africa. RBF is banking on development impact. It ensures that development funding is linked to pre-agreed and verified results, and that funding is provided when the results are achieved. We have learned that successful RBF facilities do not work in isolation, and they require close collaboration of all the stakeholders here today. We know that this incredible panel have done a lot of work in ensuring that RBFs are successful, but we know that we could do more. So I think what I would start with is inviting each of the panelists to give us your insights on how RBFs have been important in catalyzing the deployment of decentralized renewable energy markets across Africa. I perhaps would start with the people who are doing the building, putting boots on the ground. So Romain, please share your insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lamide. Few words about Willite to start. So Willite is a developer and an operator of mini-grid to increase electrification inclusion in the rural and the off-grid areas in Madagascar and in Mali. Basically, the service we provide is quite simple. First, we design and install mini electrical plants close by the village to answer to the electrical needs of the village. We do it through solar panels and batteries storage. Then we deploy the distribution with poles, with lines, and we install smart meters in each of the household close to the distribution line. And when the customer wants to purchase 1 day, 2 days, 5 days of electricity, he simply make a mobile transfer money. The mobile transfer money is directly linked to our application in the smart meters, and then the smart meter opens the access for electricity in the household for 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, depending on the purchase that the customer made. Today, Willite is mostly present in Madagascar and in Mali with 80 sites. We are currently running a program of 100 additional sites that will be fully deployed in 6 months. The guys are now in the field working on the building. So in June 24, we'll have 180 sites. This represents 500,000 people who will have every day an access to productive energy, productive electricity. It represents 10,000 SMEs, small industry, who will benefit from that as well. 1,000 public buildings such as police station, schools, health center, among others. And last but not least, 3,000 streetlights that will deploy. Obviously, those villages, talking about impact, those villages did not have were off-grid before. Therefore, the impact is a revolution at the level of the village in all the aspects of the day of life of all the inhabitants: health, education, safety, women empowerment, job creation, industry creation, environmental. It's easy. We can all understand that. What is the impact of electricity, obviously. So coming back about the partnership with UEF, first of all, Anita, I would like to thank you deeply to address our sincere gratitude to you, to your team and your partners for the job that we have achieved together, which we consider it as critical. Different positive layers. The first one, the first beneficiaries of this program is obviously our customers. Okay, we have started our partnership since more than 1 year. You have talked about 2,800 beneficiaries, but the program that we are running will help concretely. We estimate 10,000 connections. It represents 60,000 people who will have their life changed thanks to you, because basically we take the money and we reduce the access price. So for those customers, it's very important. Secondly, it helps us to de-risk, and you changed the title of the panel. I think it's very important because we are addressing the bottom of the pyramid, and there are risks outside of our hands, outside of the operation. We can see two kinds of risks that you are tackling. The first one is the fluctuation of the exchange rate. and in Madagascar is less than other country, but I'm sure in other country this is even much more high factor. And the second one is conjunctural risk. If I take an example, in the northeast of Madagascar, where there is the Sava region, which is the vanilla first producer in the world, the high quality vanilla. Today, those people are facing a drop price, a huge crisis in the power of purchasing. And unfortunately for us, we have 15 villages there. So we are happy to have there, but we are facing this risk, and you are helping us to be strengthened and to be more reliable. It's very important. I would like also to emphasize the practicity, the flexibility, and the pragmaticity of this program. You are RBF, the indicators are clearly set up. It's simple, the contracts are simple, easy to make it happen. Secondly, the fact that our IT systems are linked, it's very important for you, for the trust, but also for us, because it avoids us to have a nightmare administrative session when we are talking at 8,000 kilometers with the teams. Last point, we consider UEF as a long-term strategic partner, because not only because of the quality, the experience, the flexibility of the team who can adapt to our operational stake, but also because you are backed by very serious people who have the boldness and the willing to change, to make change happen quickly, and this is a feeling that we have. Our only regret is the 5 million, you talk about 5 million this year, probably is too low. We need 50 million, we need 500 million. I mean, the truth is that 500 million people in 2023 are still living without productive energy, and this is, obviously, this is a key stakes, and I'm sure that together with our partners, we will be fully part of the solution. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's excellent feedback for the UEF. It sounds like the UEF and RBFs provide more than just financing. It's sort of a partner along the journey. Let me invite Caroline. As an impact investor, what value do you place on RBFs being in existence before you look at investing in mini-grid sites or DRE, please?
Absolutely. So interestingly enough, as I said, yes, I'm the CEO of All-On, Impact Investor, and I'll be providing this perspective shortly. But I'm also part of the team that actually created UEF. So I also would love to provide a bit of perspective on that, because it was so interesting. Part of the question is, what are the results that RBF have provided and how essential it is? It is essential. We need result-based financing in the sector. Unfortunately, too often, when we think about result-based financing, one of the reactions we used to get from people when we were starting the UEF was, but ultimately this is going to benefit the private sector. Why do you want to give subsidy to the private sector? And it was so interesting, the amount of education we had to do to explain to people it's not about financing the private sector or giving a subsidy to the private sector. It's about providing support for universal electrification. There is no energy-rich country that has reached its level without subsidy, and people tend to forget that. So subsidies are essential to the development and to our goal of universal electrification. So, with that being said, why do I think that RBF are so essential? I think RBFs have really helped developing the sector by several ways. One of them is the way it has really allowed for proper risk allocation, allowing to now have developers obsessing the funds upon completion of result, I think has been key. Very often we had seen in the past, with some development programs whereby you had a bit of a phenomena of, those briefcase developers would only come because of the grant and not properly deliver. Well, with RBF, that has really changed, and I think that's a very important benefit to highlight that with this result-based approach, you can now actually focus on developers that are capable, developers that have proven a result, and that will deliver. So I think that's a very essential point to note. Now, very specifically about RBF and how, as an impact investor, I've seen its importance. I'll say that, for instance, when you look at the country in which I'm currently working, you see that because the RBF programs have been really well integrated in the ensemble of solutions that are in the sector, it has really helped develop our initiative. Let me explain a little bit. So RBF, as the name indicates, is upon connections being proven and realized. However, we do not always have developers that have that access upfront of the capital. And when you now have such situation whereby you have developers that are capable but do not have access to the upfront capital, but can prove that they have a signed contract with an RBF provider like UF, it allows for them to now access capital from either commercial banks or others who would not have in the past provided funding. So it's really opening up a market. It's allowing us to have now developers coming to the ground and actually deliver projects that would not have happened before. So this market creation that the RBF is providing is essential, because this is exactly what we need to get to scale. It's been clear, everyone here around here knows that mini grids are an essential part of the solution. Mini grids are, in many areas, the fastest and most cost-efficient way to actually deliver connections. So we need to get to scale. But to get to scale, we also need those developers to have access to finance. RBF allows that to make it happen. So it's not the panacea, but RBF are such an important, vital part of this equation that it's really encouraging to see how much the UEF has achieved to date and how much more it can achieve going forward in the different countries it's operating. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that excellent intervention, Caroline. So I will pass it on to Naomi Wagura of GIAP. And I think my question is, in addition to that, what is GIAP's view on, RBFs in the future for us to achieve SDG 7 by 2030? Thank you.
Thanks, Lamide. So for those that don't know, the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet is a philanthropic fund. So we are capitalized by 3 philanthropies: Rockefeller Foundation, IKEA Foundation, and Bezos Earth Fund. So we are basically, our only tool in the world is energy. That's how we fix poverty. That's how we fix everything. That's our only tool. And so for us, RBFs have been such an important other tool that we can actually deploy. And one of the funds that we've invested in is obviously the Universal Energy Facility, which Anita is doing an amazing job of running. And I think Romain has talked a bit about that. But I think the role of philanthropy in general, because we're not the only philanthropy in the room, I think the role of philanthropy in general is to put in money where others may be unsure or unclear on what the outcomes are. So for nascent markets, I think donors and philanthropy should put in, the first money in to kind of test the market, figure out the design of the RBF, because it looks a little bit different for different applications, for different markets. It looks a little bit different. So that's what our money is supposed to be for. And so more and more what we're seeing is, in a market like Nigeria, for example, maybe it doesn't make sense to bring in philanthropy now because the government is bought into the idea and is borrowing against an RBF program, right? So there maybe the philanthropy does not make sense, especially for a proven technology. Maybe it makes sense for something else. But in other markets, there are, 30-something countries in sub-Saharan Africa now that are still way behind, have barely deployed any mini grids. So our role as philanthropy going forward is to make sure that we're capitalizing funds such as the UEF to move into new markets, because it also helps the governments learn how to design an RBF, how to deploy an RBF. If I want a long-term subsidy for the sector, what does that look like? Who can I go to ask the questions on how do I get the data to design the program? How do I run it? How do I verify the connections once they're done? How do I provide long-term support? So I think that's where philanthropy more and more should be looking towards, because the need is vast, right? The need is huge. And Damiao will talk about DRC, because I think that's a next exciting market for mini grids, especially. And I think it's going to be very, very important that the RBF in DRC is designed in a way that builds on the lessons that have been learned in Nigeria, elsewhere as well. Because when we started the mini grid sector, this version of the mini grid sector 10 or so years ago, we used to give CapEx grants upfront. And as Caroline was saying, you'd have these briefcase companies who come in, get the grant, build a little thing over there that lasts maybe a year or two, and then it goes off, right? And we've come a long way from there. We've come to a place where we have technology enabling us to verify the connections, to make sure that they're actually live. They're providing the right quality of power, because that's also really important. and then paying against that, paying against outcomes. So I think there's so many lessons learned, and I think the next phase of RBFs is going to look a little different, and it's going to be a bit better, and it's going to catalyze even more investment if we make sure that we're building on the same things and not starting from scratch every single time. Thanks, Lamide.
Thank you very much, Sherry. And it's a pleasure to welcome you, Damien. Please introduce yourself and then maybe speak to the government's perspective on how important RBFs are. You know, DRC is on everyone's lips right now, so it's, you know, it would be good to hear your perspective.
Thank you. My name is Damien Tombilangana. I am the Deputy General Manager of ANSER. ANSER is our national Congolese Rural Electrification Agency. I'm sorry first for my English. I will try to do my best. Okay. We start to make an interesting experience 1 year ago with RBF program. We have in ANSER what we call a Mwinda Fund. And the aim of this Mwinda Fund is to give some CAPEX grant to stimulate supply and demand in the market in rural areas. We work on rural areas. And 1 year ago, we start with two kind of programs. The first one is with local companies to help local household with SHS. And 5 months ago, we start with a second program, an interesting one. We support companies for new connections. That means, for example, if company has already operate in a rural area, we give some CAPEX grant to help to new connections. But the difficulties, the first one is that there is not enough companies that want to go to rural areas because it's very difficult to access, and the purchasing power of population is very low. And logistic problems is very, very serious. That's why we've found, Mwinda Fund, we are trying to help that company to choose the company that have already operate in rural areas and to help them to reach population, rural population. And I think that the challenge is according not only financial, but it according how to increase purchasing power in local areas. I will give you now an example for another experience. We are now building around 30 mini-grid unit, solar unit, and to 15th December we should be around 10. But we are the state and we cannot operate. That's why we shall delegate, we shall give this unit to private sector. And first time we give CAPEX, but for example, after in 1 year or 6 months, it will be important for the company to inject new CAPEX because demand is so big. We give them, for example, 1 kilowatt, and it has to inject one new 100 kilowatt. And then it will be very important to know how it's possible to help that company to do it. It's possible for us with our fund money to help partially, but it's important to mobilize to other investment, for example, with JRP. We shall talk about it later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Damien. I think so that we can allow some time for the audience to intervene, I would just ask maybe for the next question, if we can just give quick insights on what are the key critical elements of a high-performing RBF program. So I'll start with the lady this time. Caroline, do you want to just share your insights?
Happy to, and I'll make it really short so we can definitely interact with the group. So I think I'll say 3 of them. Predictability of funds, clarity of criteria, selections and so on, and as well as rapidity of execution. So let me elaborate shortly. Predictability of fund, for those who may know, currently in Nigeria, one of the key program has been the NEP. It's been so critical in really developing the mini-grid programs in Nigeria. I mean, actually a lot of the programs have been built after lessons learned from the NEP. So an excellent program, and I will not say that it was also run by Anita before she went to UF. But very recently, there has been, I guess, questions with regards to some of the funds that had been promised to some of the developers and that might not have materialized because of, I guess, a transition into a new World Bank-led program. Needless to say, the panic it created, as you can imagine. Happy to say that it was more panic than anything else. There has obviously been great solutions brought to the table since, but just that little time interval during which there were those questions, you can imagine the impact on developers and the different funds that they had committed and so on. So a very clear line of sight in terms of predictability of fund is essential. Then selection criteria sounds basic, but very often in life, basic things are the most important. We have to have very clear criteria for selection. There's been so many cases where you have developers going through the process and feeling like, it's not clear enough, and there's a back and forth. I'm talking about even, for instance, level of permitting and so on. And obviously, there's been a lot of education that has also happened in both ways, whereby we had to explain to developers, no, we're not trying to make a complicated program, but you do have to have some basics for the program to be successful. So as Naomi said earlier, there's been a lot of lessons learned. So I think that's not so much more of an issue. It's been integrated, but this, I do insist, is essential. And then lastly, as I was saying, quick repayment. We said result-based financing. Once the results are clear and established, we need to make sure that the programs disburse right away. We do not want situations whereby developers have to wait for the funds and submit. Once the proof have been submitted, connections have been established, as per the pre-agreed milestones, the developers need to have access to their money right away. Those are 3 important points. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Caroline. Naomi, do you want to shed some light on that, please?
Amazing. 2 women first. So I think I'll just say one thing. Well, 3 things that are the same thing. Data, data, data. And I think, I make this point all the time, so it's becoming a bit of a song. But I think we do, in the development sector, we behave as if everything is being done for the first time. Everything is amazing, and we launch it, and it's new. But really, between the UEF, the Nigeria program, AMDA here, developers, there's so much data on what does demand look like in the first couple of years. And so what level of subsidy do you actually need in different markets? If Damia is designing Mwinda Fund in DRC, Anita just deployed an RBF in DRC. So she has a lot of data on who are the developers that are credible, what are they doing, where are they doing it, etc. That data should be shared with the government that's trying to design a new RBF. So all of this data that's sitting in our pockets that we're hiding, hoping to monetize one day, that day is now. The monetization is catalyzing more investment into the sector. So all of that data, move it over to AMDA, move it over to, to Lamide, and let him help governments design better programs so that we're moving faster. Because this whole starting from scratch thing, it's wasting a lot of time and a lot of resources.
Thank you very much, Naomi. I promise I didn't pay her to say that. So moving on to you, Romain. What are the critical elements in your experience, and what would you like to see?
I already share the key factor of success, but I want to add a few things. First of all, can you hear me? Okay. So first of all, regarding the remark regarding philanthropy, not in Nigeria because the states were there and so on, I think it's important to say that the first investors in mini-grids is private equity, right? And should we rely on the governments to have a part of the RBF? It won't work. I didn't see that. It did not work perfectly in Nigeria. The results are very low if you compare to the demand. And I didn't see that in any country because it's like that. Okay, no comments. So please pursue your philanthropic program onto private equity with companies like us, even in Nigeria. Secondly, data is important, reputation is important. Today you have some batch of certification programs who are ensuring that the players are serious. I'm thinking about B Corp, okay, where there is 55,000 currently B Corp stamped certificate in the world, only 150 in Africa. Okay, so we have to think all together to discuss with serious people. I was hearing about little entrepreneurs, little developers who doesn't have access to funds in Nigeria who want to change. I mean, they're not ready to do that. They are too small to take this take. We need serious people to make big things. We need industrial vision, scales, big capital, industrial people. Okay? And I think that's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Romain. So I always wonder, speaking to the point about attracting private equity, and I always wonder if, part of the work we should be doing is just have like a bunch of investors that are, as the RBF is being deployed, there's ready, like there's a pool of like different categories of funding. That would be my dream world. But I'd like to hear from you, Damien, in a couple of minutes, please. What are the key ingredients for you as ANSER, or from a government perspective, please?
Thank you. But the first level is about companies, about enterprise. It's important for us to identify the local companies that can work on rural areas, and to have permanent discussions with them, and to make some advocating with the government to create a good environment for this company. The second one is to make a kind of survey of demand in rural areas, and to search for possibilities for raise fund, because the main question is fund. If, for example, some private developer can go to rural areas and work, the problem of accessibility, the problem of purchasing power need some fund to help them to create a good environment for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Damien. So I always wonder, what comes first? Is it the funding, or is it the political will? We've had this debate. So it'd be interesting to see how DRC takes, because DRC is our golden light. We're hoping that, we're able to see more success stories in DRC, Madagascar, Nigeria, but we need more success stories. So at this juncture, I will invite some questions and comments, interventions from the audience, if there's any, please. Does anyone want to chime in? Yeah, please.
Thank you for the question. My name is, thank you for the floor. My name is Parfait. I'm from DRC. We have a company called Tech Power Services. So I wanted to ask the question about, how was the experience with the RBF in DRC? Because, in DRC we still have a problem with developing finance institution, because as developer we still struggle to attract fund, the upfront costs that can help us to develop project. And for us as a developer, even we did apply also for the universal energy access facility, but also we got some challenges because they were requiring us to have some already existing projects. And that the DRC is a new market. So I wanted to understand, why when we want to implement project in DRC, why are you copying, the situation from Nigeria, and you want to be the same in DRC, but we do have, different market, and, the DRC market is still new. So I wanted to understand a bit the success story in DRC about the Universal Energy Access Facility Fund. I don't know if...
I wonder who's in the in the best position to answer this. Yes.
Thank you for your question. Actually, we only require that companies have built one mini-grid that's also currently in operation. So it's not like we expect companies to have a huge portfolio of existing projects. And this is because we're also trying to encourage local companies also to get involved. And the idea behind the RBF facility, the UEF, is for these grants that we provide you with to help you to be able to catalyze that initial capital investment that's required to build out these projects. I hope that helps. Okay, maybe you can elaborate.
Yes, because actually for us, as you know, before we were an EPC company, and then we had developed a portfolio of, EPC projects, and then we wanted to move on the mini-grid project. But I've seen in Nigeria some companies being, funded, they got the UEF fund, but also they were, in the same situation like us. But I did not understand why for us in DRC we did not, get that fund. They gave us the condition to have at least one mini-grid in operation. But I've seen also in Nigeria some company, EPC company, but they got also those funds. So that's why I wanted to understand. I don't know.
Okay, so in Nigeria, we're operating the standalone solar for productive use program and not a mini-grid program. So maybe that's the reason we don't expect them to have a mini-grid in their portfolio, because we're not expecting them to deploy or to build mini-grids. That's probably under the Nigeria electrification project, but even under the Nigeria electrification project, again, it was the requirement of having at least one mini-grid in your portfolio. It would be pretty difficult to justify to our donors such as GAP that we're giving money to companies who don't have any experience whatsoever in building mini-grids. But I think asking for one mini-grid isn't too much.
I think there's a clarification to be had, and in terms of what your challenge is. Yes, yeah. I'm sure.
So happy to meet with you after we could discuss more.
Perhaps we have time for one last intervention or comment or question. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bishal Thapa. I'm with CLASP out of India, and we've also been doing some work around RBF in India and the South Asia region. I just wanted to get your perspective. First of all, thanks for the discussions. Great to hear about the projects. I think it's tremendous impact, lots of opportunity and basis for scale, and I think much lessons to be learned, as Naomi also described. The way we've thought about RBF is obviously it's kind of a back-ended incentive based on certain metrics, but this requires people to flow in money in order to make the initial investments. And I'm wondering if you could describe that structure in terms of who's taking the risk at the front end, and because there's still a little bit of uncertainty about whether the RBF will actually be played out. So if the outcomes are not realized, you wouldn't pay it out, obviously, right? So just curious to understand that risk. And second, in any of your experiences, has there been RBF that has not been paid out because outcomes have not been realized? And so somebody's still stuck with that investment and carrying the risk of that investment, but the outcomes has not been realized. So just curious to hear some comments. Thanks.
So maybe I would ask Naomi to comment on the question of risk, and Romain to comment on the question of just success or otherwise. Payments, please.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And especially for local companies, it's quite difficult for you to get the financing, the initial financing to construct, to buy the equipment to construct, so that then you can access the RBF. And even more so if you're not sure if you'll get paid. What we've seen is that there are more and more high integrity programs now that actually pay as long as you make the connections, and they're very easy technology-based ways to verify a connection. So that really, really helps, right? So it's not relying on people to travel long distances to go and check, right? It's reliant on just looking at the metadata and seeing that it's done. So that has really helped. In terms of who's taking the upfront risk, in Nigeria, for the NEP program, GAP and some other partners and Olon as well have been taking the construction risk and offering the financing, the equipment financing up front to do that. Nigeria is a challenging market for many reasons, but we've seen that it actually really helps with the impact. And to the point on how local developers raise financing, I've actually seen a couple of local companies issue small bonds and crowdsource to raise the financing, but you can only do that at a small scale. When you get bigger, it gets more difficult. But I've seen that happen in some cases where they're able to say, we have a grant agreement, we have a surety that it will get paid, and so give us this money to build and we'll repay you. You're assured that you'll get repaid. And they really cut down on the cost of construction so that they're able to cover the whole debt that they raise with the RBF they get at the end. So it's a bit of a balance, and it's still transferring a lot of the risk to the private sector, which Roma can speak about in more detail.
Actually, if I may just add something briefly with regards to financing. So as an impact investor in Niger, obviously we have Alon as the largest portfolio of mini-grid developers in Nigeria. So we definitely have the opportunity of provide upfront financing for a lot of those projects. But very specifically, earlier on, I was talking about how RBF solutions need to be integrated in an ensemble of different offering. I'll give one example, and again, in partnership with the GAP. DART, Distributed Aggregation for Renewable Technology Platform, is a platform that has been put together that provides demand pooling and aggregated procurement to mini-grid developers. And through this funding, helps them, in a nutshell, summarizing since we don't have much time, but get better prices from their foreign suppliers. So one of the things that we've done is to make it possible for those mini-grid developers to actually access DART funds, knowing that part of their repayments would be through their assigned obtained NEP program. So we're just trying to create a lot of different synergies between the different existing programs to indeed help unlock this upfront financing question, which is indeed very real. So impact investors such as ourselves, for our direct funds, we provide debt and equity, but also specific programs such as the one that I've just mentioned with GAP and others. Those are the different elements on the ground. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the clarification. So if we take 100 of investment, 90% will be done through private equity and debt. So definitively the private operators are taking the risk, which is good. Which is good because if we will have to rely on somebody else, we will not be responsible, we will not have the good cost, will not have the good tools, the good management, so we are responsible. 10% of RBF, is it enough? Is it not enough? Is not enough, not in terms of percentage, is not enough in terms of number of projects. We need to go much more far. But I believe that 10-15%, it's enough to cover this kind of risk.
Okay, thank you very much, panelists. I think we've come to the end of this session. Quite insightful. I think there could be more discussions to be had. I always say the Africa challenge is a 600 million people challenge, and so we need more. We need UAF to be bigger, and this is not a challenge. This is just what we need. But thank you very much for your insights, and it's been a pleasure to have you. Yeah, thank you. Take care. Bye.